I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons first. Thank you so much to my Bibliospren, Bibliohowlers, and my Bibliomancers. It means a lot to me that you give me your extra support for my passion and hobby. Hi everyone, Petrik here. First of all, Merry Christmas. And yeah, I'm posting my list of my favorite books of 2023 on Christmas. And if you are celebrating Christmas, and I wish you happy holidays as well. I hope that you will get to spend some time with your loved ones. But as usual, we are nearing the end of the year, and I think it is the time for me to talk about all the best books that I read in the year 2023, and I'm going to narrow it down to my top 15. But although I am saying that this is regarding all the books that I read, regardless of their publication year in the year 2023, but well, almost all the books that I'm going to be talking about today are somehow books that are published this year. So I think it is safe to say that even though I gave a lot of 3 stars and also 2 stars rating within this year, I still have a blast reading many books, many fantasy and sci-fi books within the year 2023. Just like always, before I talk about the list of the best books that I read this year, I'm going to list only one book per series, and allow me to talk about my reading stats first. So in the year 2023, so far, I've read 254 books. I think I have time to read one more book, but also I'm not sure whether that's possible or not. But if let's say that's possible, then in total there will be 255 books. But before you get surprised by the number of books that I read, I want to make it clear first, 80 of these are novels, including short stories and novellas. Not a lot of them, but yeah, short stories and novellas are included in this 80, but the remaining 175 books, they are all manga volumes. And in total, about 40,000 pages that I read was for books, and then 37,000 pages for the 175 manga volumes. I won't be talking about the best manga that I read this year in today's video. I'll be talking about that in Petrik's Choice Award of the year 2023 at the end of the year. But yeah, I think that's about it, so let's begin. And before I really begin, sorry for all this preamble, but before I really begin the top 15, I want to mention 2 titles first, and they are the best short story and also the best collection of short stories. For the best short story, I have to give it to The Passing of the Dragon by Ken Liu. You can read this short story for free on Tor.com, and I highly recommend it. Once again, Ken Liu is always the best when it comes to writing short story, well, and long novels as well. But when it comes to the matter of short story, I do think that Ken Liu is the best author for it, and this is another proof. I think this is my second favorite short story of all time after The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu as well. As for the collection of short stories, novella size, I'm going to choose this one, Jade Shards by Fonda Lee. This collection of short stories contain 4 prequel titles from the Green Bone Saga. And I think many of you know just how much I love the Green Bone Saga by Fonda Lee, and I am clearly very biased about this world and the characters. Just reading about them was more than enough for me to give them a 5 out of 5 stars rating. And that's exactly the rating that I gave to Jade Shards. I think this was the correct prequel short stories for me to say goodbye to the world of the Green Bone Saga. But certainly not forever, because I know I will be reading Green Bone Saga over and over again for many years to come. Totally character-driven, urban fantasy at its finest. I think that's about covered it up for the honorable mention. Now let's talk about the top 15 novels that I read in the year 2023. Let's start from number 15. And I have The Tyranny of Fate by Richard Swan. This is the second book in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. Right now, I am already in the possession of the 3rd book, The Trials of Empire, but I haven't read that one yet. I will read The Trials of Empire, the conclusion to the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, in January next month. But Tyranny of Fate is the sequel to The Justice of Kings, and I think I love this one just as much as The Justice of Kings. I did have a few minor issues with The Tyranny of Fate, but they were not enough to conquer my passion and also my love for this book. I think Richard Swan is crafting some of the finest modern fantasy right now, and the ending of this one is just utter pandemonium. If you love a great fantasy story about morality, law, and justice with one of the most distinct narration, just like let's say War for the Rose Throne by Peter McLean, then I think you cannot go wrong with reading Empire of the Wolf trilogy. And yeah, I really love the Tyranny of Fate. Just take a look at this beautiful cover art as well by Martina Fajkova. And yeah, I look forward to reading Trials of Empire. But before that, if you still haven't read Empire of the Wolf trilogy, I highly recommend it. And moving on to the number 14 spot, we have the first book that I read in the year 2023. And this is Trash of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, the first of the Secret Project novels, the first of the 4 Secret Project novels by Brandon Sanderson. Although it is true that in my list of most disappointing books this year, I did mention the second and the 4th Secret Project novel, I cannot say the same for the first and the third, because Trash of the Emerald Sea and also Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, both of them are incredible, and I'm putting Trash of the Emerald Sea at the number 14 spot. It is beautiful and surprising because I did not expect Brandon Sanderson could write something as whimsical and also reminiscent of Terry Pratchett's like the one that is told in Trash of the Emerald Sea. This is a Princess Bride Cosmere inspired story. It is told from the perspective of Hoyt, very different from many other Cosmere books, but I think it is the one that became a lot of Cosmere fan favorite. And yeah, I love this one as well. It is a great standalone novel, and I think many of you who haven't read Brandon Sanderson's books, and if you want to start by reading a Princess Bride inspired Cosmere story, just start from reading Trash of the Emerald Sea. I know that we as Cosmere fans, we like to say that you have to read this, you have to read that before you read Trash of the Emerald Sea. But as a matter of fact, I know that many readers jump into the Cosmere from reading Trash of the Emerald Sea and they start reading many other Brandon Sanderson's books. So yeah, this one is at the number 14 spot. It is a great standalone tale by Brandon Sanderson. And moving on to the number 13 spot, this is a conclusion of a quite big series, and this is Waybound by Will White, the 12th and the final book in the Cradle series, a super popular progression fantasy series. I have been a fan of Cradle for plenty of years now, I think since the year 2020 or 2021, I cannot remember right now. But yeah, I have been a fan of Cradle for quite a while. It is a progression and also very shonen manga inspired story. For those of you who keep on complaining about manga and then end up loving Cradle, I'm kind of confused because this is very much anime and manga inspired series. But anyway, that's another topic. Waybound is the conclusion to the Cradle series, and I think it is a very satisfying ending. It also leaves up some room for more stories in the universe, which I think is being told right now in a new series by Will White. But Waybound is a very action-packed and also epic conclusion. This is the end of Lyndon's journey, and also it's kind of satisfying to finally see Lyndon's final result from the beginning of Unsold. And of course, this is progression fantasy. He started off really weak, and by the end, he's just mega strong now. But I think in a lot of progression fantasy, this is always the end game. And for that, I think Will White did a great job in writing the action scenes, in making them engaging and also insanely huge in scope. I did not expect Cradle would become something as epic as this, and I'm really glad that it did. And moving on to the number 12 spot, this one is a book that hasn't been published yet. Not only within this year, not in the previous year, but this one is really not published yet because this one is going to be released next year in the year 2024. But I had the pleasure and opportunity to actually read this one early. This is The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan, the first book in the Last Legacy, I think, trilogy. I have posted a full spoiler-free review of The Silver Blood Promise, but for this one, if you are looking for something revolutionary, something that truly break the ground of the fantasy genre, then this one is not for you. But if you are looking for something familiar, reminiscent of the lives of Lok Lamora, something in the tone of the First Law and also the humor of Kings of the Wild, then you cannot go wrong with reading The Silver Blood Promise. It is just so entertaining, so fun, and so readable. I couldn't put it down when I was reading The Silver Blood Promise. I think Lucas, the main character, and then the badass and the child trope being implemented in The Silver Blood Promise was handled really well. And yeah, I just love this one, and I think I have mentioned this many times, but we need more high-centered fantasy novel, and this one did its job nicely. Of course, just like The Lies of Lok Lamora or Mistborn: The Final Empire, The Silver Blood Promise ended kinda on a standalone manner. There is no cliffhanger, but of course it leaves out potential for the second and third book to shine even further. And yeah, I cannot wait for them, even though The Silver Blood Promise is not released yet. Take a look at the cover art though. It is absolutely stunning, right? The cover art is done by Jeff Brown, and yeah, I'm already excited to see the cover of the second and third book as well. And at the number 11 spot, we have another book that is not released this year. This one is released in the year 2020, and this is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. Many of you should know by now that if you have been following my channel since last year, then you will know that The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu is the series of the year 2022 for me. I love Ken Liu's writing very much, and right from the first chapter of The Vanished Birds, well, Simon Jimenez's prose immediately reminded me of Ken Liu, and that the first chapter of The Vanished Birds was absolutely incredible. If it was a short story, it would have become one of my favorite short stories of all time. And yeah, it did work as a short story. But The Vanished Birds is definitely not a short story. It is a novel, and it tells a story of found family. And also, let's just say this is what I wanted from The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Although I appreciate the cozy and the found family aspect of that book, I really could not read that one. It is not for me. There was not enough intensity at all for me to continue reading the first book in The Wayfarers by Becky Chambers, but this one got them all, and it is very well written. I actually got a paperback copy of The Vanished Birds from my friend Evie, but because of how much I love The Vanished Birds, I decided to get a hardcover copy of the book as well. And yeah, I will read Spear Cuts Through Water next year. Definitely one of my favorite standalone books right now. So that's for books in the number 15 up to number 11 spot. Now we start from the number 10 spot. This is Mother of Learning, Arc 4 by Nobody 103 or Domagoj Krumaj. This is the concluding volume to the Mother of Learning web novel series by Nobody 103. And as I said in my previous favorites of Hobbies Fantasy video, if I'm talking about Mother of Learning as a series, this would rank so much higher, but I'm talking about one book. And yeah, Mother of Learning was a web novel, originally a web novel that you can still read for free, I think, on Royal Road, but it has been divided into 4 volumes by Raidmark Creative with a new and well-polished editing. I love this series. I started reading this series within this year, and I finished it within this year as well. And I think the entire series coming to an end in Mother of Learning Arc 4 was just super satisfying. Zorian Kaczynski character development throughout the entire series is very rewarding. He started out from being very unlikable and became someone that is very reliable and just enjoyable to read. If you love a fantasy story with coming of age, magical school trope, and also time travel, you must read Mother of Learning. And that's to put every intricacies, details, and planning out of the way when I'm talking about it, because it is actually very incredible how Nobody 103 managed to plot everything and also make sure to reveal every secret and plotline in a very satisfying manner. I am not sure right now whether there will be a continuation to Mother of Learning or not, but if not, I am already very satisfied, and I will definitely read more books by Nobody 103. And moving on to the number 9 spot, we have Esarhaddon by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the third and the final book in the Rise and Fall trilogy. But if you are reading Michael J. Sullivan's books, I really cannot recommend you to start from the Rise and Fall trilogy. This is the bridge series from the Legends of the First Empire to the Rhyria books, the Rhyria Chronicles or the Rhyria Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. If you were to start reading Michael J. Sullivan's books in the world of Whelan for the first time, I highly recommend you to start at the very least from the Rhyria Revelations or the Rhyria Chronicles. But that's, well, another topic. I have actually posted a video about this. Esarhaddon, although it is the third and the final book in the Rise and Fall trilogy, works really well as the culmination to Michael J. Sullivan's writing career in the world of Whelan so far. Those who have read this book, those who have read every book by Michael J. Sullivan in the world of Whelan so far will know what I'm talking about. Esarhaddon is a very crucial character in the Rhyria Revelations and also in the entirety of the world of Whelan. And once you read this one, once you read the coming of age tale of Esarhaddon, you will understand even further why. And not gonna lie, after reading this one, I am very excited to read again the Rhyria books from the beginning, from the Rhyria Chronicles up to the end of the Rhyria Revelations. It is incredible, and I love the ending of this one very much. There were moments in Esarhaddon, especially in Avamparta, in the Tower of Avamparta, that really gave me goosebumps. It is only a bit unfortunate that there were some POV characters that I think should not exist actually in Esarhaddon. If they did not exist, I think I would have ranked Esarhaddon much higher on my ranking. But anyway, even with their existence, I still think Esrahadon is an incredible book. I mean, it is in my list of favorite books of the year after all. Moving on to the number 8 spot, we have 11th Cycle by Kian Ardalan. This is a Berserk, Dark Souls, and also Hollow Knight inspired grimdark fantasy novel, and I think it is criminally underrated. This is one of the books that I read in the month of January, and it continues to become one of my favorite books of the year. It is an incredibly character-driven grimdark fantasy novel filled with a lot of iconic and memorable moments, and it is fitting for me. I think that shouldn't come as a surprise though, because I am a huge fan of Berserk by Kentaro Miura and also From Software games. I haven't played Hollow Knight yet, and I know that is a surprise, but I will play that as soon as I can. But yeah, I am a huge fan of Berserk and also Dark Souls, so reading this one really felt suitable for me. It is epic. I think Kian Ardalan did a great job in developing the main characters and also preparing secrets in the epigraphs and also the narrative. Pretty much something similar to Dark Souls cryptic storytelling. I am very excited to read the continuation to this one. 11th Cycle is the first book in the Mistland series. I think the second book is currently slated to be released at the end of 2024 or early 2025, but whenever it's ready, I know that I will be reading it as soon as I can. If you love Berserk, you love Dark Souls, you love grimdark fantasy, character-driven grimdark fantasy, well, I think you should try reading 11th Cycle. Do know though that in the beginning of the book, it has been mentioned by Kian Ardalan that 11th Cycle, just like Berserk, is telling an insanely grim story. And if you are not a fan of that, I think it might be a good idea for you to stray away from reading 11th Cycle, and there is nothing wrong with that. So 11th Cycle is in the number 8 spot, and at the number 7 spot is again another book just like 11th Cycle, Tyranny of Fate, and also Trash of the Emerald Sea that I read in the month of January. So yeah, January was an incredible reading month for me. This is Of War and Ruin by Ryan Cahill, the third book in the Bound and the Broken series, an epic fantasy series with a lot of Dragon Rider and also dragons. If you love Dragon Rider epic fantasy, I cannot recommend the Bound and the Broken enough. I have posted a video regarding why you should read the Bound and the Broken series. But Ryan Cahill is an author that keeps getting better and better with each book, and I think Of War and Ruin is his best book so far. I mean, take a look at this size. This is, I think on Kindle, it is 1,400 pages long, and the word count for this one is more than 400,000 words long. It is definitely the biggest book in this entire list, and it is satisfying for me. There were plenty of emotional moments that really tug at my heartstrings. I love the character developments that were given to all the main characters, and Dane Attiris, of course, is one of my favorite characters of all time. There were some moments in this one that I cannot say too much because of spoilers, but some moments in this book from Dane really gave me that moment that you want to fist pump, you know, because it's just so cool. So damn cool. After reading Of War and Ruin, I am convinced that Ryan Cahill is an author that will, well, his name will only get more famous and more recognized with more years and more books. And knowing Ryan, I know that he will write so many more books in the future, even beyond the Bound and the Broken series. Moving on to the number 6 spot, I have a classic. Yeah, of course this one is not being released this year. This is The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. An easy 5 out of 5 stars rating. I have wanted to read The Dragonbone Chair or the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy for many years, and I finally got a chance to read this one for the first time within this year, and I gave this one a very positive rating and praises. Love this from the first page to the last, and I totally understand how many readers mention how boring the first 200 pages of The Dragonbone Chair was, but I think coming into this one with the right expectation, I knew what I was getting into, and I did not feel bored at all in the first 200 pages or the slice of life portion of Simon in The Dragonbone Chair. It was amazing, and somehow it really felt like I was reading something nostalgic, even though this is the first time I'm reading The Dragonbone Chair. And to think that this book was actually published pre the year 1990, I was completely mind blown. Loved this one very much. The Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy, especially I think The Dragonbone Chair and the third book in the series, To Green Angel Tower, has inspired a lot of popular authors and many highly acclaimed series like A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin, or The Kingkiller Chronicle by Petrik, and also also Eragon by Christopher Paolini, and I can definitely see the inspirations coming from this one. I made an impulsive decision to actually buy the Grim Oak Press edition of the Dragonbone chair without actually reading the book first, but thankfully this gamble paid off nicely. The world building is intricate, and my god, Ted Williams' writing, I can read that all day long. It is so beautifully written. And yeah, I have finished reading Memory, Sorrow, and Ton Trilogy. I think I will start reading The Last King of Boston Art 2 months from now, because I just finished reading the Bridge novel, The Heart of What Was Lost, and I enjoyed that one as well. It was already a big struggle for me to choose between this and To Green Angel Tower, but I think when we're talking about pacing, this one is, well, this is my honest opinion, it is better paced compared to Green Angel Tower. Even though To Green Angel Tower definitely has a much stronger and impactful ending. And now we are entering the top 5 spot, and not gonna lie, this is where things gets even more difficult to decide, but this is the ranking that I'm settled in for now. So at the number 5 spot, I'm going to choose Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. This is the newest standalone novel by M.L. Wang. This is dark academia novel at its finest. I think many of you know that The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang is the best standalone novel that I have ever read. It is also my favorite self-published fantasy novel of all time. Due to how much I love The Sword of Kaigen, I had very high expectations awaiting and also reading Blood Over Bright Haven, and it delivered my expectations. Scratch that, it actually exceeded my expectation. This is another incredible standalone novel from M.L. Wang, and if you love Full Metal Alchemist, you love topics that talk about racial injustice, gender issue, without it ever feeling like it's preaching, I think you must read Blood Over Bright Haven. The repercussion and the consequence of the characters' actions is insane. Really, it's insane. I truly hope there will be a special edition for Blood Over Bright Haven someday, because this one definitely need more interior illustrations. But regardless of that's happening or not, Blood Over Bright Haven is another proof that M.L. Wang is really the queen of writing standalone fantasy novel, which is a very hard task to do. And speaking of standalone novel, in the number 4 spot, I have another standalone novel, and I think this is the best standalone novel by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 3rd Secret Project novel, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I will not lie, the interior illustrations by Alia Chen definitely play a part in enhancing my reading experience of the Secret Project novel. But even with that excluded, I was already looking forward to reading Yumi and the Nightmare Painter the most out of the 4 Secret Project novels, because I know from the beginning that this is inspired by Hikaru no Go, a manga, and then after reading through the book, in the middle of reading through the book, I was convinced that Final Fantasy X video game and also a Kimi no Na wa anime inspired the creation of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and at the end of the book, it is proven. Brandon Sanderson mentioned that Hikaru no Go and then Kimi no Na wa and also Final Fantasy X definitely are the inspirations behind Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Just having these 3 titles as the inspiration behind this Cosmere book was already enough to make me, well, to make me fall head over heels for Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And I was invited by Brandon Sanderson and his team to go to his house to talk about the Secret Project novel. I'm still really sad that I could not make it, but anyway, yeah, I think this one is Brandon Sanderson's best standalone novel. It is again different from so many other Cosmere books, because this one is supposed to be more romantic and cozy, but very atmospheric as well. And I think Brandon Sanderson nailed the jobs really nicely in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. The character development between Nikaro and also Yumi. Suffice to say that out of all the characters and couples that Brandon Sanderson has ever created, Yumi and Nikaro, well, they are some of my favorite couples. Maybe as much or even more than Vin and Elin. Yeah, I love these characters that much. And I think there were some criticisms regarding Yumi and the Nightmare Painter feeling too romantic, and I have to disagree with that. If anything, this is just a slice of life story focusing on 2 characters from different cultures, trying to understand each other as best as they can, and also the themes of art and what it means were superbly written. And yeah, the ending was satisfying, and I truly hope Alia Chen will do more interior illustrations, whether it's for Cosmere books or other books, but I hope Alia Chen will do more, because her artwork, my goodness, it is some of the best illustrations that I have ever seen. I have been a fan of Alia Chen for many years now, and this book just proved it extensively more. And finally, we have arrived at the top 3 spot, and not gonna lie, if it were up to me, these 3 would have shared the number 1 spot for 2 best sci-fi books of the year and also the best fantasy book that I read within this year. But for the sake of ranking, this ranking comes with the caveat that it might change tomorrow. Yeah, that's something to remember, okay? So I'm going to start from the number 3 spot. This is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, the penultimate installment in the Red Rising saga. I did a full reread of Red Rising saga this year, and I absolutely love Lightbringer. There were a lot of expectations, high expectations going into Lightbringer because it has been a few years since the release of Dark Age, but again, it exceeded my expectations wonderfully. This is definitely one of the best books of the year, and it is, as I said, the penultimate installment in the Red Rising saga. It was emotional, filled with many destructive moments, and some of the most iconic moments in the entire series, and that's saying a lot. After reading this one, I truly cannot wait to read Red God, the final book in the Red Rising saga, which I just heard and found out will not be released within next year. I think the soonest that one will come out is in the year 2025. If you want to know my full thoughts regarding Lightbringer, make sure to check out the full review that I posted on my YouTube channel. And the other best sci-fi novel of the year at the number 2 spot, well, at the number 1 spot as well, this is Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. This is not being released within this year. Demon in White is the 3rd book in the Sun Eater series, and it is released in the year 2020. And I cannot believe that I only read this book now. Demon in White is the biggest book in the entire Sun Eater series, and that includes Kingdoms of Death and also Ashes of Men, unless you count Kingdoms of Death and also Ashes of Men as one book, as it was originally intended. But the Demon in White is the biggest single volume in the entire Sun Eater series so far, and it is my favorite one. If I did not include the rules of talking about only one book per series in today's video, you will see Empire of Silence, Howling Dark, and also Demon in White, all 3 of them being included in my list of favorite books. Not just within this year, but really in my list of favorite books because they are just that good. Christopher Rocchio is an incredible author and storyteller, and to think he's still relatively very young as an author. But this galaxy-spanning science fantasy or space opera series is intricately built and also supremely well written. Love Christopher Rocchio's writing very much, and Demon in White really felt like, at the very least, 3 books being compressed into one tome. There were so many things happening: emotional, espionage, assassination, and also epic battles, all of them being put into Demon in White. And I love every moment of reading this book. It is truly one of the best books of all time. And if you were to ask me what is my favorite sci-fi books of all time, this one will be included in my top 5. For sure, maybe even top 3. I still cannot decide. So right now I'm putting this as the best sci-fi book that I read this year, and it shared the number 1 spot with the best fantasy book that I read this year. And this one is actually published this year as well. And I'm sure it will not come as a surprise to any of you that my number 1 fantasy book of the year is The Will of the Many by James Allington, the first book in the Hierarchy series, the newest book by James Allington. I read this one in the month of March, and it remains strong as the best fantasy book that I read within the entire year. I was so waiting for this one because I'm a huge fan of the Lycanius trilogy, but this somehow ended up becoming James Allington's best book. At the very least, if we're talking about overall quality, this is as good as The Light of All That Falls. But I think this one is somehow even better. It is so well polished. The main character, Viz, is just utterly compelling from the beginning to the end. From the first page, I was already emotionally invested, and this is a Roman-inspired plus Red Rising, and also with a touch of the Name of the Wind inspired epic fantasy, but it is definitely distinct and James Allington's own work. I kept on getting messages from people who have read The Will of the Many and saying how much they loved it, and it always gives me joy hearing that. Since the Lycanius trilogy, I think James Allington is an author that deserves so much more recognition, and I'm glad The Will of the Many is giving him that earned recognition. I have always mentioned that The Name of the Wind is the best fantasy book with a magical school setting or trope Well, The Will of the Many is here now to contend that position. It is one of the best books that I have ever read, one of the best books of all time, and Strength of the Few is easily one of my most anticipated books of next year, up there with the fifth book in the Stormlight archive, Wind and Truth. So yeah, my book of the year is The Will of the Many by James Zylington. And also, if you're wondering, this is not the official cover art. This is the broken binding edition with Katrina Payne's artwork. And at the back, this is a quote that I chose to appear on the book. And I'm really proud, once again, that my quote, the quote that I choose, is being put on the book published by The Broken Binding. And yeah, I utterly love this one. If you haven't read The Will of the Many yet, I highly recommend you, because trust me, you don't have to wait until the series is completed. After you read this one, you will want to do a second read of The Will of the Many. This is one of those few books where after I finish that, I immediately want to do a second read of it, and I will do that next year, near the release of Strength of the Few. So I think that's it. That's my top 15 best books that I read in the year of 2023. Do let me know how many books that I listed today that you have read, and also if you have read them, which one is your favorite. But if not, which one is your favorite book of the year? Do tell me about them in the comment section. And again, I just want to say Merry Christmas. I think I have about 1 or 2 more videos to post before the end of the year. If some of you have some time to watch, then I hope my videos can bring you some joy. But yeah, happy holidays. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.